and to this amazing panel. We have a little sizzle reel that we would love to share with you about the Folk Americana Roots Hall of Fame. So those images were from a recently installed exhibit celebrating some of the legends of folk Americana roots music who are being inducted as part of the inaugural class of Farhoff, Folk Americana Roots Hall of Fame. We're going to abbreviate it to the acronym Farhoff because that's a lot of words to say. And this is part of an initiative of the Bach Center in Boston. That is the brainchild vision of their CEO, Joe Spalding, who's back in the back. All of this happens because of him and amazing vision and an incredible team. So thank you, Joe. Yeah. And what better place to celebrate folk Americana music than a living, breathing, performing arts center where it's constantly surrounded by multiple genres of music in Boston. Incredible. Oh, I should introduce myself. My name is Dina McLeod. I was the founding executive director of the Woody Guthrie Center in Tulsa. I am the founding partner in the Museum Collective, which is a partner on the Folk Americana Roots Hall of Fame initiatives. And I have the honor of being able to ask questions of this incredible panel. I'm so excited about this. So joining me today, one of the inductees into the inaugural class, representing Peter, Paul, and Mary, and also the founder of Music to Life, with his daughter Liz Stookey, Noel Paul Stookey. Woo!
Yeah.
Singer-songwriter, author, chef, songwriting teacher, all the things. Amazing friend, Mary Gauthier. And president of Oh Boy Records, representing one of our inductees, John Prine, Fiona Prine. So we're going to dig right in. I'm going to start in the middle with Mary, just because. So Mary, we're talking about all of these inductees into this Hall of Fame, and I know I shared the inaugural class with you. There are 28 members of this inaugural class. And when I was speaking to some of my other singer-songwriter friends, they said this is like a book of my teachers. Could you take maybe a couple of these artists and talk about their influence on you and your music?
Well, you know, there is, first of all, the reverence for our elders in these genres that some other genres probably lack. That we do have a sort of a trail that was blazed by those that came before us, and we acknowledge that we're walking on a more level ground because of the work you did, and because of the work John did, and because of the work all of these inductees did. And so that acknowledgement right there, I think, is super important. That the genre, I think in general, the young people don't think they're coming from outer space. like they're coming into a tradition. And I think that's huge, and I was so aware of that myself when I picked up a guitar for me, and it's just the way it went down for me. For me, I always felt as though I was studying, honoring, and standing in the shadow of John Prine.
Mary's talking about songs of change, and definitely Peter, Paul, and Mary were part of a movement of songs of change. How did you personally see that happen? How was music that catalyst for change?
I have to dip into some personal history, which includes some confessional aspects. As a teenager growing up in the Midwest, the music that struck me most was rhythm and blues. And I knew it really for its color, both literally and figuratively. And when I came to New York City with a background of being a comfortable master of ceremonies, I found the Village to be a welcome home for somebody who would take it upon themselves to introduce other musicians rather than to be the center of music themselves. And in that context, I began to try to emulate folk music. Really, I knew nothing about folk music, other than the fact that it had some pretty simple chords. I even wrote a couple of bogus folk songs in an attempt to be authentic. What was it? I remember the great story. There's nothing that sells like authenticity. If you can fake authenticity, you got to admit it. Yeah, I wrote one about. I fabricated a story about an owner of a mine painting a white chalk line for the people working in the mine. And the chorus was, "Work that pick on down the line, white chalk it." God, such an embarrassment to myself as I look back at it. But there in the Village was Len Chandler. There in the Village were all of the folks that had inherited the mantle of meaningful music, from Pete, from Woody. There was Ramblin' Jack Elliott. There was, and this was music that kept nagging at me. And as you were talking, Mary, I thought, the appreciation of music is continually going on for all of us. And I think that we go through stages that are probably not unlike mine, where we listen to music for the enjoyment, and then we begin to listen to it for the content. And then we begin to recognize that the content is perhaps inspiring, and we begin to wonder if perhaps our lives couldn't more parallel that of the lyrics that we're paying attention to, particularly when it comes to self-governance and to the support of people who are doing the good things in life around us. And so ultimately I found myself enthralled, even though, and many of you, or some of you may know this, the first song that Peter, Mary, and I ever sang together was Mary had a little lamb. The reason that it was the first song is because it's the only one we could agree on the chords and the lyrics for it. Because folk music has that transitional, inviting quality that says, look, if this doesn't say exactly what you want to say in a song, then write your own lyric. Yeah. Put it to this melody, or change it, fix it. So, Peter and Mary were very instructional in my salvation, my rescue from rhythm and blues, rock and roll, and into folk music. And that certainly continues to happen. And I have a great faith in the fact that it will happen again. In the flash music that happens at halftime, at Super Bowl games, even the Grammy Awards, which have so many peacock feathers and sequins that it becomes difficult to perceive the exact value of the music that's being sung, other than its entertainment value. One is, I think, impressed ultimately by music's ability to eventually arrive at the truth. And so I have the greatest hope for the fact that there will be another folk revival, though it may not manifest itself musically the same way it did in the 60s and the 70s. Listening to Peter, Mary, and I sing If I Had a Hammer, there's a wonderful moment that you took away from us, or that you adapted for your own use. When we get to the third verse, which is, if I had, we have a hammer, and we have a song. Or no, we have a hammer, and we have a bell.
Yeah.
And we have a
Song.
And the audience always punctuates, song to sing, all over this land. I thank you for that, and I'm looking forward to hearing Fiona and a lot of other comments about the graduation of folk music.
So Fiona, speaking of truth, songs of truth, John spoke to all of us about universal truths and real issues and just the reality of life. How do you hope to share his legacy through his music and words with a new generation?
Well, first, thank you for having me. So some of my cohorts at Oh Boy Records, and my son is here today, and that's how we do a lot of the work of taking care of John's legacy, honoring what he started, what he built on over 50 years. And we continue at the label to honor the songwriter, first and foremost. I was thinking when you mentioned peacock feathers, John didn't own a set. He didn't have any peacock feathers. And I think that's true of when we talk about folk in particular, even roots, Americana. I think it is true that for the most part, the writers, the singer-songwriters, the Mary Gauthiers of the world, you see the person first. I mean, you see them physically performing, but you see them through their lyrics. And I think everything John really committed to paper and performed was the story of his own life. I often say to people, if you want to know really anything about John, if you want to know the story of his life, you start with the first song he ever wrote and recorded, and you go all the way through to Tree of Forgiveness and When I Get to Heaven. That's the story. And nobody does that better than John, for sure, but many, many other writers. And it is going on today. I'm happy to say that at the label, for instance, we have some amazing writers. They're young, they're still making their way. People like Trey Burt and Emily Scott Robinson. We have Kelsey Walden, of course, who John loved. And I would urge people to dig into the canon of folk music, right? And I do think there's a revival in that when we look at some of the younger artists, not just that we work with, but the Noah Kahams of this world. I mean, they're all songwriters. They may have a little more on the peacock feather variety, but nonetheless, they are songwriters. Yes, John created an enormous legacy. We are both honored and I won't say that we're scared, but we're certainly on our toes, right? I know firsthand, I lived with John for many, many years, of course. I saw firsthand the work of being a writer, the work of being a performer, the work of packing your suitcase every week or every second weekend and going away and leaving home and saying goodbye to your family. That's the work of being a working artist. And I did get to see that. So there's 50 years of legacy. We're proud to continue the legacy. the community that John created is like nothing I've ever seen. I did get to see that firsthand. I stood side stage at many, many shows, and I'd look out into the audience and I saw little life stories out there. I saw couples kind of leaning a little closer that may not have done that in a while. I saw a generation sitting second and third row, grandparents, parents, children. So those people are the people that we hold close right now. So next month, we have a festival called You Got Gold, celebrating John again. So we keep busy. We definitely keep busy. I started a foundation right after he passed that we're really just getting started with, but it's called the Hello in There Foundation. And we set that up very, very soon after he passed, because one of the first things that we missed about John in our family, and we heard this from the community, was we had lost a very kind, generous human being, as well as a wonderful artist. So the foundation aims to raise funds and in turn look into those little small corners that John did in songs like Sandstone. People who may don't make a lot of noise, right? And that's folk music in a way, telling those stories from those little corners where people reside and sometimes are often not seen. So we're thrilled for John and for our family that John's being inducted. I know he would be very proud.
The television clip of Pete Seeger and Arlo together, where Arlo starts singing. I think it's in Africa, and Arlo starts singing for 30,000 people. Fools rush in, da-da-da-da-da. Now that's not a folk song, but everybody knows it. So guess what? It's a folk song. And that kind of ties in. I'm sorry if I end up being mono-visual, but I keep seeing this evolution in folk music from the artists themselves. I'm sure that John's earliest songs were about self-realization. That is to say, who am I? What am I doing here? This pains me. I'm in love with this person. They may be or maybe not in love with me. So I see this evolution that happens in our lives and expressed artistically as self-realization, and perhaps there's a lot of peacock feathers connected with the self-realization part. But eventually, you become aware that you have I hesitate to call it a debt to society, but you have an involvement with society that you cannot deny.
That's right.
And
you can't turn your back on it.
And you can't turn your back on it. And so you want to become an integral part of making it better, to Mary's point.
And speaking about better, and Mary, Rifles, Rosary Beads.
Yeah.
I think, talk about evolution, that's to me living proof of evolution. I mean, I would let Mary talk about it better, but she took wounded and PTSD-stricken veterans and had them write songs. It was a Grammy-nominated record. And you know, from Sandstone to that.
And it was through really just devouring Sandstone for decades, metabolizing what John did in that song as a songwriter. Like, how did he do that? I mean, I metabolized that long before I had ever written a song, long before I'd ever gotten sober, and I'm 34 years sober.
Yes.
So long ago, far away, that song, repeat, 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 it was predictive of what was going to be in my life 40 years later. And so when I got invited to write with veterans, I wouldn't have known how to do it if John hadn't have written in first person a character that he invented, that he brought to life, that became alive and real. And maybe that's a living legacy right there, is we show each other how to do it, and the next generation is going to do it in ways that we can't imagine right now, but they're going to look back at how it was done before and leapfrog off of that.
Links in the chain.
Links in the chain, as Pete said.
Yeah, the world is changing. There's nothing else for sure.
And part of that evolution has got to be anger at injustice. I see that. I mean, certainly when people, let's say, 30 years ago, begin to listen to rap and hip hop and go, what is that? That's not music. Well, it was folk music in its most outrageous and outraged form, and it had, and continues to have an impact. Salt Paul, Jaziri X,
Yep.
these are young writers that I mostly know through my daughter's work with Music to Life. I don't know about you guys, but I hardly ever listen to the radio anymore. I don't buy CDs, and when I have music in the house, it's usually Handel playing water music, because I just want to be someplace else for a moment, right? But the evolutionary quality is there, and it does, I think outrage is part of that second stage.
Yeah.
You know,
Justifiable anger.
justifiable anger.
So,
Sure.
okay.
I dabbled with, this is a Pete Seeger and a Doris Plynn song. I dabbled with changing the lyrics to make them more inclusive, but I think you can probably understand that we're all in this together. My life rolls on in endless song, up of earth's lamentations. I hear the real, though far off hymn that hails the new creation. Above the tumult and the strife, I hear its music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing when tyrants tremble sick with fear and hear their death knell ringing? When friends by shame are undefiled, how can I keep from singing? In prison cell and dungeon vile, our thoughts to them go winging. When friends by shame are undefiled, how can I keep from singing? And though the tempest loudly roars, songs in the night it giveth, and though the darkness round me close, songs in the night they liveth. No storm can shake this inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging. Since love is Lord of heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? How can I keep from singing?
Other than seafood? That's always good. That was always the first port of call. Get some good seafood. Well, John had a wonderful relationship with the Wang Center. I was looking earlier at some of the past shows that he played, and back in 2008, I think that might have been one of the first times that he played at the Wang. He actually talked on stage about Club Hassan and about the importance of that to him when he was starting out. And I was, I hadn't read that before, and I thought that's how interesting that he was making that connection all the way back to the 70s. And there he was at the Wang Center's, that big stage. And of course, he played his last show, 2018, at the Wang Center, the year after he put out the Tree of Forgiveness. And it was almost, in its own way, a victory lap, I think, for him. It was a full house. People were excited that he had a new record out, that he had new music. So So yeah, lots of fond memories of Boston. I'm really looking forward to getting up there and seeing the work you've done there, you know, with the museum.
I look forward to it. It'll be nice to welcome John back home.
Thank you.
John
Thank
also
you.
played benefits for Club Pessin.
Back in the day.
Well, he wasn't
in
at
the
the Wang
80s?
Center yet. He was
Right.
definitely headed there.
Yeah.
But I came up, we all come up through Club Pessin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's.
Yeah, it's a little
My
hundred-
youngest son is now playing in Club Pessin back
It's
in November, I
it's
think.
the
Yeah.
Boston equivalent of the Bluebird in a way. A little
Yeah.
110 seat folk club. It's been there forever. Jim Rooney used to run it. John came back and played Sanders Theater at Harvard University as a benefit for Club Pessin. And I had the privilege and honor of opening that show.
Oh, really? You opened?
I did. And I got pictures.
What year was that, Mary?
Oh, I would imagine I was living in Nashville, so that was probably 2000, 2001, something like that. Yeah.
I'll have to look that up in the archives, see what we got.
Yeah, he was there to give back, which is I think also a part of this thing that we're all involved in. Is this sense of thanking them that brung us. He didn't have to play a small room like Sanders Theater. He was definitely headed for the Wang Center, which is, I don't know, 3,000? 5,000? A lot of thousands.
A lot of seats.
A lot of seats.
A lot of seats, yeah.
And yet he did that for the club, and it was a very successful, an important part of keeping the club's doors open.
Right.
Yeah.
So Mary, since you have the microphone so close to your mouth, and you've got a guitar over there, would you like to share a song? So part of the initiative is, at the Folk Americana Roots Hall of Fame is definitely focused on education. How do you think, what do you want the new generation to take away from this space when they come to visit it and see the exhibits, take part in the programs, whatever they're participating in?
I think one of the most important things that, and we've spoken about this at board meetings at the Farhoff, is to have an audio reference. It's one thing to look at pictures, to look at guitars, to look at Mary struggling with a microphone and her agility to get under it. You get an 8.5 for that one. I do think that it is important to have an audio link and the capacity for people to put an artist with a song that is of particular importance together. So I don't. Have you got that in the blueprint, Joe? Yep. Okay, we're getting a thumbs up back there. All right, Mary, do us.
All right. I really didn't bring this to play it. I'm on a panel after this one that's on the legacy of Nancy Griffith. And I brought this guitar to show it off at the next panel because Nancy gave it to me. It's one of the early tailors that were made for her, Nancy Caroline Griffith in Mother of Pearl on 12th fret. I'm going to spill coffee and water. I'm not really prepared, but I'm going to try.
And it's going to be amazing.
Of course.
Well, my father sure could use a little mercy now. The fruits of his labor fall and rot slowly on the ground. His work is almost over. It won't be long, he won't be around. I love my father. He could use some mercy now. My brother sure could use a little mercy now. He's a stranger to freedom, shackled to his fear and doubt. The pain that he lives in, it's almost more than living will allow. I love my brother, he could use some mercy now. My church and my country, they could use a little mercy now. As they sink into a poison pit, it's gonna take forever to climb out. They carry the weight of the faithful who follow them down. I love my church and country, they could use some mercy now. Every living thing could use a little mercy now. Only the hand of grace can end the race towards another mushroom cloud. There's people in power who'll do anything to keep their crown. I love life, and life itself could use some mercy now. Yeah, we all could use a little mercy now. I know we don't deserve it, but we need it anyhow. We hang in the balance, we dangle between hell and hallowed ground. And every single one of us could use some mercy now. And every single one of us could use some mercy now. One more time. And every single one of us could use some mercy now.
Good behavior between 1970 and 78. I had a real spiritual turnaround, and actually it resulted, to a large extent in all of the music that I've done since the wedding song, which came out in 1970. We got back together again in 78, basically to protest the installation of the nuclear reactor at the Americana, and we had a wonderful grown-up relationship from there on out until 2009, when sadly Mary passed away. Peter and I do get together occasionally, and honestly, pursuant to what we've been talking about today, we get to jet plane.